Tougies take 53. Welcome. It's the Jeff Skinner episode.
Of all the things, huh?
Yeah, it's important because we're going to reach none of our goals, and hopefully you'll overpay us for it. Tougie, how are you doing on this fine August evening? August, obviously the worst month.
It is actually. It is the worst. I'm doing okay. I think today is, as we kind of talked about before we hit the record button here, today is going to be an interesting show. We have some fun things to talk about, some not so fun things to talk about, but we do always get to start things off on a high note with the warmies. So I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah. So this segment, we're gonna it's a sports segment, and I've entitled today's warmies, "Are you ready for some football?"
Ooh, I am actually. I'm very excited. As I just told you a minute and a half
All right, well,
ago.
that was the first question. You got it.
Yeah.
You were ready for some
football. I just told you a minute and a half ago. Got me a fresh subscription to Hulu TV. You should sponsor us, Hulu. And yeah, ready to watch some football this year while Madden's a broken mess that still hasn't somehow killed my interest.
God, can you imagine? We had a Hulu sponsorship. I'd switch to name brand cereal. I'd stop eating Circle Flakes.
Oh, we'd be even more in the big time. We're already in the big time, of course. With our let's talk about them now. Our lovely friends at Manscaped, who sponsor not only this Warmies section, but this podcast in general. Big time with Manscaped. Get yourself the lovely performance package. Get yourself the Lawnmower 4.0. You got the Weed Whacker. We've been able to get our hands on all of this stuff. It has revolutionized, dare I say, my routine in a lot of different regards. So a big shout out to our friends at Manscaped.
Code Tougie, 20% off. Manscaped.com, free worldwide shipping. Slash and burn, your balls will thank you. So, back to the warmies. We've already clarified that we are both, in fact, ready for some football.
Yeah.
So, Tougie, off the top of your head, if you just had to guess with a number,
okay,
right? You don't have to name all the teams, just with a number, just as a ballpark.
Yeah.
How many teams currently have the same starting quarterback that they did 2 seasons ago?
Holy shit.
Just as a guess. This is more to get a ballpark guesstimate than it is a trivia question.
That's a question, though.
Isn't it great?
Oh my god. I think it's less than half.
Oh, it is less than half.
It has to be, yeah.
It is 11 of 32.
11 of 32. Wow.
Yeah, you get the Bills, Browns, Steelers, Chiefs, Raiders, Cowboys, Giants. Shout out to Daniel Jones, just barely making the cut. Falcons, Cardinals, 49ers, and Seahawks. All still have the same quarterback.
Well, the 49ers might not even be on the list if they start Lance over Garoppolo.
Yeah, so they actually barely made the list because other teams have announced who their starter is, and the 49ers have not yet.
So it could
we could be down to 10.
Less than 10.
Yeah, no, yeah, we legitimately could.
That's unbelievable. Like, imagine if that happened in the NHL with goaltenders.
Right?
Insane amount of turnover. Oh my god.
Constant carousel.
Jesus.
So, we'll start with the most difficult question. What team's Carson Wentz on?
I do know this, shockingly. The Indianapolis Colts.
That is correct.
That is an incredible trick question, though, given the circumstances.
I originally debated asking that question as, where did Carson Wentz? But I was afraid it wouldn't come out right in the first try. So, question number 2, where's Andy Dalton?
Chicago, because it's his time still.
That is correct. He is a Chicago Bear. So according to today's Vegas betting odds, who is the odds-on favorite to walk away with Soupy Boopy Foofy 6?
I mean, it's got to be Kansas City still.
That is correct.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have a guess at the number 2 team?
Tampa, probably.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets interesting. Do you have a guess at who has the third best odds
Third best odds at
of taking home the Lumboopy trophy?
God. Buffalo?
It is Buffalo. Very nice.
Hey.
So off the top of your head, do you suppose you can guess who has the worst odds?
There's a couple of teams in the running.
It was pretty clear once I saw who it was. I was like, oh, that makes significant sense. But in my head, there were two or three before I saw the actual number.
So, okay, the teams that came to mind, Houston, Jacksonville. There's got to be a team. And the New York Jets.
It is Houston, and it's like not even close. I believe the team above them has plus 2,400 odds, and they're somewhere around 16,000.
Jesus. Like, are they just presuming that Deshaun Watson's not going to be able to play the full season?
I feel like even if he was, it's just not.
How much can Deshaun Watson and Laramie Tunsil do?
Apparently not a lot, because Laramie Tunsil, I believe, is injured.
Oh, well, there you go. Poor guy.
This is my favorite of all the questions, and this is the final question. Who is the singer of the current Monday Night Football song?
Fuck. Is it Carrie Underwood?
It is not.
Damn it.
You will recall 2 years ago, she was replaced by, and they brought in... I'm sorry, this is so funny to me because it backfired on them so brilliantly a year ago, but they brought Hank Williams back in, and it didn't last very long. Carrie Underwood, though, was moved to the Sunday Night Football show. The current Monday Night Football song, after they had to replace Hank Williams because he doesn't listen to himself speak, they had to replace him with Little Richard, who is dead. So Little Richard is the current Monday Night Football theme song singer.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I've watched every Monday Night Football for a while. So
I had no clue. That's incredible. Shout out to Little Richard.
So now you are ready for some football.
I am ready for some football.
All right. Well,
yeah. Hey, not bad.
We'll play the intro with a new version done by Little Richard.
I don't think you want to actually edit that.
This is intro now. I feel like it'd be like
that was the intro, everybody. No editing required on my part. We're actually not putting in the intro. That's it. I promise you, at least on the video form version, in terms of what happens on Spotify, that's still up to Deej. But that was the intro. Deej, we do still have some viewer questions today. Shall we get into them before we get into some bad, disappointing, depressing topics of discussion? But don't worry, we'll turn it around with some happy points. Viewer questions.
Let's take a look at these questiones.
Yeah, so this first one is from a Habs_fan. How did Buffalo screw up the Eichel trade so badly? He still hasn't addressed his injury, and the season is around 7 weeks away. And of course, that I think was based off of a tweet from David Pagnotta, which he pointed out essentially that without surgery, like now, Jack Eichel won't be ready for the start of the season. And yeah, it's interesting. Like, obviously, Buffalo's just stood there. Nothing's happened. There's been no resolution to the whole Eichel thing, and it's gotten to the point where I think everyone's just incredibly tired of even talking about it.
Yeah. I think people are just forgetting he exists at this point. I don't know. It's interesting because you can, if you look on Twitter, the latest news is that he's injured so bad he's not even tweeting.
Jesus. I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Buffalo just needs that house needs to be cleaned, and it's not going to happen. It's just I don't know. I mean, the whole time all this has been going down, the Pagulas have been on a beach somewhere.
They've just been enjoying life.
It's like, Jack Eichel, we're out by the pool. I don't know. Shout out to late Bill Hicks for letting me steal a joke.
Oh, God. Next question comes from a friend of the show, Alex. And it was kind of another topic of discussion that's kind of gone away. Thoughts on Tarasenko and where you think he'll go? Now, there are rumors that he could go to the New York Islanders, which I think would make sense. He could be a good Jordan Eberle replacement. But that's another move where there was all this talk of he's gone, he's still there. And if a resolution does happen, it just seems like it's going to be completely out of left field when all the talk is, if it hasn't already died down about Tarasenko, when it finally does completely die down.
Yeah. I mean, does a sling count as a jersey? Feel like we could see him in one of those at the start of the season. I don't know. There's something weird here, right? He should have been traded. He is a high risk, high reward player, right? For any team that's taking him on. I think every GM in the league notices that. I think St. Louis realizes that they need more pieces than Tarasenko to win another or like to get back into cup contention. They need to make some changes. So Tougie, do you think it's that St. Louis is asking for too much? Or do you think Tarasenko's cooked and the second they kick some tires, they realize it's just not going to work out? Because it has to be one of those two things, right?
It does, yeah. And I mean, that's a tough call, right? I wouldn't be surprised if they're probably asking for a little bit too much, because while they have made moves like bringing in Brandon Saad, you're still dealing with, okay, Jaden Schwartz is gone. You're going to lose Tarasenko too. And it's just, it could be that. But yeah, it could be too that teams are just, it could be a combination, to be honest. They're asking for a bit too much for somebody where people are very, very much concerned about his health. And if he indeed, like those reports were out there a few months ago of like, man, one more good shot to that shoulder and he could be in a real bad way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I also have to, I gotta mail a puck to you, Alex. I've got it sitting here on my desk. I just have ADD and FedEx is over a mile away.
There you go. This next question comes from Jonathan. Why does the QMJHL produce so much good hockey? Because there's nothing else to do but
it's like, what else are the French teenagers going to do? Smoke cigarettes and write poetry competitively? So I'm sure they do.
It's that, or it's, hey, do you want to earn a living off the water? No, you don't. Nobody does. It's a good living, but how many people genuinely enjoy it? Not too many people that I've ever talked to. So, yeah, why not?
Isn't basketball like the number 2 sport in French Canada? I feel like I looked this up once.
I think it's just the number 2 sport
not.
Now in Canada to begin with, due to the success of the Raptors, mainly.
That's true. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And shout out to the Canadian Football League, of course, which we had a great discussion on in the last show.
There's extra people on the field.
The goalposts are where they were in the 60s.
It's like that. The NFL's moving the goalposts again. We'll never make it.
We'll never make that change. This next question.
I'm sorry that sometimes I make a joke that's just for me, and that was my favorite of my jokes. That was.
This next question comes from Hawks, which is also football related and designed specifically to piss me off. What is the greatest NFL team to never win a Super Bowl in your opinion? He said the 2007 Patriots, which is the correct answer. By definition, statistically, by all regards, the greatest team to have not won the Super Bowl. Aside from that, the best team to never win a Super Bowl is probably the Atlanta Falcons, because God damn it, how much talent can they waste?
Yeah, there was a statistic, and I don't remember the exact way it was phrased, but it was which quarterback over the last decade has put out the best performance game in and game out, and their team has like hindered them the most. And it was Matt Ryan had actually been like shot in the foot by his team the most times, which I thought was fascinating. I wish I could remember exactly how the stat was phrased so that I could look it up. But it was Matt Ryan keeps having his team spite him, apparently.
I do love me some Matt Ryan, and it's a shame. So I don't know. Poor 07.
There was that one year where the Carolina Panthers had Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey both healthy and performing. That was probably one of the better teams we've seen, but I think you're right. It has to be the Falcons.
Yeah. Our last question here comes from AJ. Going into next year's international tournaments, are Canada's potential under-20 Olympic team the most dangerous they've ever looked? I only bring this up because no. And the reason for that is in terms of looking at something from an all-time perspective. For the most part, you could say, okay, what team was the most dangerous entering a tournament? But then they could be like 06 Canada and be terrible. So it's better to answer that type of question as a looking back instead of a looking forward. But I mean, Canada should be consistently dangerous.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's the thing too, is that it's one of those things where it's significantly too early to tell, especially like you can go back through, I feel like, any iteration of the Canadian U20 team, and like the answer just has to be like the 1990 team with Eric Lindros. It's like it doesn't matter who else was on the ice. I don't know. That's pretty interesting. Like if you look through the years, like there was that one year where they had like Jeff Carter and Ryan Getzlaff. So I don't know. That's actually, if we run out of segments, take a look back at U20 teams.
I mean, number one, that is fun as hell, but also too on the topic of like, hey, what's like the Canadian and US Olympic teams? What would they look like and stuff like that? We've been asked to cover that stuff. We're gonna wait until we actually know if the NHL will take part in the Olympics.
Yeah, right. It's like the pre-Olympic show. This week we're just reposting a show of opinions we already had.
So yeah, I mean it's worth waiting at that stage. So again, everybody, thank you very much for your questions. It was a shorter segment this time because Deej and I's recording time was in a state of flux for a little bit, so I didn't have as much time to wait to kind of accumulate and gather those questions, but we thank you for it. Again, twitter.com/Tougie24, at Tougie24, whatever. I always put up a tweet there, and of course the Discord as well. You can find links to on YouTube, my Twitch, stuff like that. I always we have a section up there called podcast questions. So hey, you want your question asked? There you go. This is the place to ask. Deej, we move on. Now this is almost record time. I feel like that we're moving on to the general section here of things to talk about. Normally the viewer questions last for a while, but we do have more hockey subjects to talk about. There, unfortunately, in just the past 5 days alone, has been a lot of unfortunate news. We are going to get said unfortunate news out of the way as much as we can because we try to have fun. It's a hockey podcast, but there are certain things, we could choose to not speak about, and I don't know if anybody would blame us, but then there are certain things that I kind of feel compelled to talk about. And hey, I don't know if that's the right way to handle this show, but regardless, a couple of passings, honestly, in the hockey world over the past few days. Jimmy Hayes, former Bruin, former Panther, just awful news, like absolutely awful. A wife, 2 young kids at this stage, and obviously his brother Kevin still with the Philadelphia Flyers. Like, I mean, people have obviously speculated. I'm not one to speculate. It's not so much about how did this 31-year-old pass away. It's more so about that, hey, this was a guy that had a pretty goddamn good hockey career that, again, it's a goddamn shame. And on top of that as well, indeed, I'll just mention what I'm going to mention and let you throw in whatever input you want, as much or as little. That's
well, yeah. I mean, I definitely. I mean, I have a few things to say about Jimmy Hayes too. Yeah. Go ahead. I mean, there's like it's weird because the Florida Panthers haven't really been around long enough where like a player of any significance has passed away. Yeah. And I think it's very interesting to see amongst the fan base, like almost all of us have fond memories of Jimmy Hayes because he was a guy that was scoring goals on a Panthers team that had no direction. This was still, the Panthers were not a good team when he was on it. And so I think he was a fan favorite for a lot of people. And I think another thing is like, I know we've got kind of a younger listener base too. And it's interesting, like when you're like 24 and you hear about somebody dying at age 31, it seems so far away. And I don't know. I just I don't know if I'm 32 and I feel like I was 17 years old yesterday and just,
I'm 5 years younger, right? But I still feel the same way. And I've questioned like when the hell that's going to change. And then, you hear
it
about.
It never does.
Yeah. Like you hear about something like that, like whether or not it was, like in high school, unfortunately, I had a good amount of people in my graduating class that ended up passing away either within high school or within a few years after. And then you get older and you hear of these other incidents. And like you said, like you're 32 now and you had someone younger than you. It's never not shocking, especially too when, you think of it as a sports figure as well, where, we know these are normal people, but for the most part too, like you see someone on a platform like that and you do think like, I guess still that mystique of a larger than life type of person is still there. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So, to the friends, family of Jimmy Hayes, I mean, again, just awful, absolutely awful. For the New York Rangers and their fans, they lost one of the biggest, if not the legend of the New York Rangers in Rod Gilbert, who, it's been like 8 years now or so, but, I used to play ESHL with a guy that was a really big Rangers fan. And, what number did he use in ESHL? He used Rod Gilbert's number. Why? Because that was the guy. And from an outside perspective, like, oh, number 7, Rod Gilbert, like, how big of a deal is he? It's like, from the outside perspective, he's one of those guys. I think most of the older fan bases have them, where there are these legends for their teams that maybe didn't quite transcend to become like this most well-known legend throughout the league. It's like you have like this, like you, not to say Rod Gilbert wasn't in that level, but even like Mark Messier, and maybe it's a recency bias thing too, like Mark Messier is viewed, and Wayne Gretzky and Lemieux, even though Lemieux only played for one team, they are viewed on that NHL-wide level of legend, where I don't know how many people considered Rod Gilbert that before that Rangers fan base. He was never not beloved. And, he played for that team at a time through the 60s, almost up to the 80s, where even at the end of his career, he didn't tail off. You're talking 1971-72 up to the end of the 77 season. He posted anywhere from 75 to 97 points. Like, he was so stupidly consistent. And probably the only thing, he was a Hockey Hall of Famer in 1983. Like, the only thing missing was a Stanley Cup. But Rangers fans never held that against him because he was the guy leading the charge, again, through the 60s and the 70s that helped that team get anywhere close. So, it is someone, thankfully, who was who got to live a full life. And again, was beloved, and I think will forever obviously be beloved by that Rangers fan base. So he is still the Rangers' all-time leader in goals and points. Not to mention, too, I think understated. I mean, at 5'9", listed at 5'9", through the 60s and the 70s.
He was probably the tallest player in the league in the 60s
or
and 70s.
Had the change already happened as to where it's just these gigantic goons that are just destroying each other like in Philadelphia?
I feel like that was mid-90s, culminating in like, oh man, Eric Lindros. We found him. You know, I feel like it was mid 90s is when the size shift started to happen.
Yeah. But regardless, again, another unfortunate pass. And then really this was the one too that again, like there's not much that can be discussed here because it's awful. But again, very much have been thinking about the friends and family of 3 goddamn teenagers out in British Columbia. Caleb Reimer in particular, who was going to be with the Edmonton Oil Kings. Like, again, this was a rough week in the hockey world when it comes to stuff like this. And like I said, it was one of those things where, you know, Deej and I had the conversation. Screw it, we'll be honest. We had the conversation of, do we even bring this up? Because it's such a goddamn bummer, and it's so sad on all accounts. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe I just feel rather compelled that we should have brought it up based off of how, for the most part, closely knit the hockey community is because of just the size of it. But just, yeah. I mean, again, it was a rough week. Yeah,
it was a very rough week.
So along with that, then, we do have kind of an overall art. Like, there's one story, actually 2 stories now in particular, because something else broke today that, you know, again, we debated whether or not to bring this up, but I think it can lead into a more overarching conversation that is not just Deej and I jumping on the bandwagon of screw this guy, screw that guy type of thing. Like, I don't want to use the word hopping on the bandwagon of outrage culture, but in a way, I think that's how some people would view it. But that's not what we're trying to do here in bringing these next few topics up.
It's almost like a drama culture more than outrage in a weird way. It's like it's in the middle, you know?
I agree. So the way we're going to overarch this is by kind of bringing up again that we've mentioned it on the show, myself in particular, but it has been a really rough summer in terms of being a hockey fan. This summer was supposed to be about excitement. The Seattle Kraken are in the league. And instead, there's just been these stories that continue to hover over the league. That's just like, I'm not excited yet for hockey to come back. And it just sucks. And to mention these then, obviously you have the stuff with the Chicago Blackhawks. Still very much ongoing. I've talked about my frustrations with that, and that, you know, right now from, the outside perspective, you have to question how has nothing been done? How was nothing done? We're still waiting for resolution on all of that. But obviously, indeed, you know this, from, you know, based off of the information we have now, which is not everything, you are going to come to the logical conclusion of fuck the Chicago Blackhawks and people like Stan Bowman shouldn't be in the league. That said, people like Stan Bowman haven't done themselves any favors. If you remember what he did at the draft, being like, hey, look at how I surrounded myself by women as I make my pick. You know, I think there's a reason why the narrative towards Chicago went the way it did, and it's because the Blackhawks, from a public perspective, have not helped themselves. And I think it's the same thing for Montreal. Still drafting Logan Mailloux. We've talked about that to death. Yes, someone deserves a second chance. They robbed him of the chance to go about it the right way. Again, it's another team where you just kind of, like, for me, I don't know if you agree. Again, I'm speaking solely for myself. You just kind of feel really dirty as an NHL fan off of stuff like that. And then you have what's going on with Evander Kane. And I will say this outright. I am not going to be mentioning these things to say, look at what a piece of shit Evander Kane is, especially this first topic, because the headline that was being passed around, it was a David Kaplan story off of The Athletic, and the headline read, Judge rules Sharks Evander Kane must face discovery in abortion for pay lawsuit. People read that and you go, what a monster. I read that and I go, what a monster. Not for that alone. In that, as Deej, you and I talked about, discovery is, in terms of the legal process, at the bottom. That just means, hey, we're not immediately dismissing
the very
this.
beginning.
It is
It's the very beginning. It basically just means the lawsuit wasn't thrown out.
Right. So that is still an ongoing suit. In terms of this, though, with the Vander Kane, and I bring this up because we talk about, this is the overarching story. It's not about any one of these stories in particular. But hockey has the feeling that you kind of get with the NFL, where if someone is good enough at their job, you will give them as many chances as possible because they can make you money and maybe help you win. And you look at somebody like Evander Kane, and I think the reason why people really grabbed onto this headline and just immediately take it for truth is because, again, Evander Kane has done himself no favors. And here's his track record. He had stories in junior about being an asshole, which were seemingly confirmed from a lot of people's perspective, with him flashing the cash in Vegas, with the tracksuit incident with Dustin Buffalo in Winnipeg. He was sued in 2016, in July of 2016, for allegedly assaulting a woman in a hotel room. A month later, he pled not guilty to criminal trespass and non-criminal harassment after an incident at a bar. Again, you can read about the conclusions of those, but not guilty in those senses. You still say, okay, so people were saying, okay, when has Evander Kane shown us who he is? So you have those incidents in junior, you have this. He was sued in 2019 by a casino in Vegas for walking out on a $500,000 gambling debt. He files for bankruptcy. He has the ongoing, now very public and messy divorce with his wife, where, of course, she accused him of gambling on his games, which, again, I'm not sitting here saying he definitely did it because we don't know yet. And then you get this story, like I mentioned, where this person is saying that while Evander Kane was married, that they were having an affair, that she had paid him twice, or that he had paid her twice before to terminate a pregnancy, and said he'd pay her a third time, and then he reneged. Hence, this lawsuit is coming up. So you see why people are running with this idea of, my God, Evander Kane is a terrible person. For me, I read that headline, and I'm not immediately sitting here saying this guy, I mean, in a way, your initial reaction is, my God, this guy's a monster. But then you let the emotion subside. You step back from, yes, what is admittedly taking part in outrage culture and reading a story and saying, what a piece of shit. And you say, well, hey, it's still got to go through due process. But you look at kind of the rundown for Evander Kane, and you have to wonder if he was a less talented player. If he was Brendan Leipsic, would he still be in the NHL? Brendan Leipsic obviously has a less than worse reputation than this. He was apparently just a cocky douche who said Tanner Pearson's wife wasn't attractive. He's out in the KHL. So you look at the Chicago stuff, where, players, coaches, personnel, the accusations that were made there, most of these people are still in the league. You look at Logan Mailloux, not exactly facing any consequences of his actions. You look at someone like Evander Kane. And then the news today that you had the Tri-City Storm of the USHL announcing the signing of Mitch Miller, who, of course, was drafted by the Coyotes. And then after the story broke about what a piece of garbage he was and arguably still is, they rescinded his rights. He lost his scholarship to the University of North Dakota. Back in the news today because he gets signed. And, of course, you're seeing the same terminology from the people leading the Tri-City Storm in saying, well, we're going to take care of him. We're going to look out for him, and we're going to get him back on the right track. And then, of course, you can look at stuff that Mitch Miller has said. I agree with Deej in that, hey, it sucks to even say his name and platform him in even this slight little way. But you look at what he said, and I certainly come to the conclusion that he hasn't learned a goddamn thing, period, based off of the words that he says. So, why do I bring all these stories up? It is because it's that overarching theme of, as long as you are good at your job, and can help an NHL team or any team win hockey games and make money, that it does not matter. It doesn't matter to them what you've done unless you've gone far enough that you're no longer worth the headache. That's why someone like Tony DeAngelo is still on Carolina. Worth the headache because he's good enough with hockey. And it's just worn me down. I mean, Deej, that's the only way to put it. It's worn me down. This summer was supposed to be, like I said, about Seattle, about having a lot of fun with hockey. And it's just like, how many of these goddamn moments and incidents, like how much more of this is there? And like I said, based off of what's true, what's not, here, that, or the other, it's just, I just wish I could be excited for the fact that, hey, hockey's going to be back less than like 2 months from now. But it's just, it seems like, I don't know, maybe I was hoping the NHL would handle situations better than the NFL. But it just seems to be a thing in sports no matter what. And I don't know, maybe some of my naivety is finally going to the wayside, and, you know, accepting the fact that a lot of people already know that it's about winning and it's about money in sports, and that's it.
I don't know. I think it's one of those things where there is a book by an author by the name of Luigi Pirandello. And I forget the exact Italian name. Not a pasta. But essentially, one of the theories of all of his books, right, is that there exist 1,000 different versions of every single person, right? Like every single person that's met you has imagined your life and has a different version of you. And I think it's so fucking hard it blows my mind. It's like, everyone's a piece of shit. Why does everybody go around and act like they're not? And it's insane to me to sit here and listen to everyone on Twitter act like they are better than these people, to act like they're better than Logan Mailloux or better than Evander Kane. Guess what? You're a piece of shit. None of that person's decisions have affected you in any way whatsoever. So who the fuck are you to sit there and say, hey, fuck that guy. Let's take away his NHL career. He's done nothing to me. I have a need to see people punished. Take a look at that in the mirror if that's how you feel. Fucking, there's a phrase. I'm not even religious, but there's a phrase, judge not that ye be judged. And what does that mean? It means if you come down on somebody for something and that shit happens to you later, because let me tell you something, weird shit happens to people. And you are not in control of the things that will happen to you. And if you come down on somebody for something that did not affect you in any way, you will get your fucking throat cut. Like, that is how the world works. And so I think people need to get off their fucking high horses. And so you sit here and you see people just spoon feed themselves Twitter all day because they have not yet realized that Twitter is just Fox News for millennials. What are you doing? Are you not mad at something today? Open up Twitter. We'll tell you what to be mad at. We don't share good news on Twitter. We tell you what to be afraid of, what to be outraged about, who to be mad about. And none of those things affect us. And so we regularly invite this negativity into our lives, and we take these judgments on people we have never met, will never met, and will never make a decision that affects us in their entire life. For what reason? And to that, I say, to the NHL community, to every reporter, to anybody that takes these negative stories and wishes to cast someone in a negative light, be a better person, because you too have just become a piece of shit.
To that point, shout out to the people that got mad on Twitter about the Frölunda Indians of the SHL announcing that they're going to be changing their logo and dropping the Indians name. Keep in mind, this is a Swedish club who took on the name in the 60s when they were basically Western Frölunda, and people started calling them the Wild West. And then there was a 90s kind of takeover where American culture really became a thing. So they adopted the Indian logo, and now they're getting rid of it. And people are saying they're giving into woke culture. I fully agree with your point that yes, a lot of this is just people looking for something to be mad at. In that,
yeah,
like I understand the argument that some people have of, well, screw you, I am better because in the Mitch Miller instance, screw you. I honestly, I have that opinion in a way. Like, I don't think it's in perpetuity that I can say I'm a better person than Mitch Miller, but also I did not do the incredibly fucked up things that he did and then still 5 years later not apologize. Like, I feel like there's in a way, it's tough to not come to that conclusion. But I also, like, I don't voice that as a way to be like, hey, give me likes on Twitter because I said this.
I think for me, I don't know. It might just be because I'm older. Because when I was 5 or 6 years younger, I probably would have had the same opinion as you. And I feel like you just get to a certain age and you hear about Mitch Miller not apologizing, and you feel so fucking bad for Mitch Miller because you realize what a difficult life he has ahead of him because he has not learned a very hard lesson yet. Like, you can get bullied once, and that sucks. But eventually you'll come to terms with it by forgiving whoever did whatever to you. You can't harbor that shit.
I mean,
it's more the people who did something messed up and don't realize it. And those are the people you feel bad for as you get older. It's hard to explain until you just reach an age where your brain gets wired that way.
I get what you're saying, and it's not. I think some people might read that as you're defending him. It's
because they're kids. They just haven't.
Well, yeah, it's sympathetic to Mitch Miller in the way that it's like, my God, how has he still not realized? Like, it is clear that there is something wrong there with him, not just because of his actions, but that he is still, even at 19 now, still not well adjusted enough to understand how fucked up what he did was and the ramifications of it that continue to affect the people that he victimized and that will continue to affect him. I guess you can compare it to the Logan Mayu thing, obviously completely different situations, but at least he appears kind of maybe to have at least a little bit of a better understanding. Whereas you look at Mitch Miller's comments and it's like, this fucking poor kid. God, how stupid are you? Like, you still don't have a realization. So I understand what you're saying, unless I'm wrong there. And
so it's
my deduction.
Well, I guess no, yeah, you get what I'm saying. It's one of those things where if somebody does something messed up to you, them apologizing is not what's preventing you from moving on. You forgiving somebody is always what's preventing you from moving on. Their actions are not something you can control, right? Somebody said one of my friends said this to me once, and I don't know. It's basically, if I ever got a tattoo, it's one of the things I'd tattoo on me. And he said, you cannot change the taste of vinegar. And I don't know why that resonated with me so hard, but it did. And so if somebody's going to be a dick to you, like, them apologizing or being a dick to you is not what's preventing you from moving on. And that's the thing, is it's like, forgiveness does not require an apology. It just requires acceptance. And I think that's why when I see this about Mitch Miller, I don't feel sorry for the victim, because I've heard him speak and I know he's moved on from it, and I'm proud of him, and I've seen what he's done, and I've heard the family speak, and I've heard their comments on this. And then I see Mitch Miller and he still hasn't put it together for himself yet. And I think that for me is like, it just hurts to see like a young man not put his shit together like that, if that makes sense.
I understand your standpoint. Like I said, I hope other people do as well. And I mean, yeah, I agree with that standpoint. I agree with, I think, a lot of people who, I do agree a lot of what you might see on Twitter or on social media is just people jumping on for the sake of jumping on.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, it seems like such an outrage headline, but it really is turning into Fox News for millennials.
that said, do I still have the standpoint of Logan Mailloux as he requested should not have been drafted? Yeah. Do I still have the viewpoint of as it stands, unless they can prove otherwise, should some heads roll with the Chicago Blackhawks? Yeah. And with this Mitch Miller thing, based off of his statements released today, do I believe that he is still in a position where he shouldn't be? Yeah. I think it's clear. He still hasn't learned. And I don't know who the hell is around that kid to not get him to smarten the hell up. But that's a failure on their part, too. I mean, like I said, this was my point of bringing this up. This fucking sucks. I want to talk about hockey. I want to have fun talking about hockey. I want to sit here and talk about how the Seattle Kraken and what their draft looked like and all that shit. But there's just so much negativity and so many negative subjects surrounding hockey, the NHL right now, and it just sucks. It really
it's
does.
Like I don't know. I feel so this is, and I think this is like a greater point that I can kind of like elaborate on a little bit more, is like I just feel like the culture of Twitter and everything going on with Twitter has slanted the parts of hockey we hear about, right? And like, I'm not trying to praise the NFL, but they just like it. The NFL has a thing where like they understand that like, oh, reporting like this guy's a piece of shit. Like that doesn't go anywhere in the NFL. So in the off season, you like the news you hear in the NFL is it's always like, it's like Tom Brady rented out a field and it's like him and his new receivers have been practicing every day and they look awesome. Like that's what you hear in the NFL in the off season. And I think Twitter has kind of influenced the NHL news thresholds where like you would never hear anything where it's like Marc-Andre Fleury is like practicing harder than ever because he's ticked that the Vegas Knights traded him. Like, and that's the stuff that I think should be news, but it doesn't become news because hockey Twitter needs to be mad. And you won't be mad about like the other things that are essentially non-news, but would be typical off-season news. You know what I mean? It's like in the last year or two, it's like the off-season news has centered around, oh, this guy's a piece of shit, because that's what gets hockey Twitter going. And I think it's just, it's an important thing to keep in mind that these things have gone on every single year in the history of the NHL. Like, I can't stress this enough when I say everybody is a piece of shit. Like, there is every single person listening to this, no matter who you are, there is somebody out there that thinks you are a complete scumbag. Whether it was one accidental thing or somebody misunderstood something, there is somebody that thinks of you as a bad person. And I fully believe that there is no such thing as a bad person. I think everyone tries their best. And I think much like Luigi Pandillo said, there is 1,000 versions of people. And in some cases, you're going to be a villain for some people. And that ignores your intentions. And I think what we're seeing is now, because the way Twitter accepts this news of people being mad about people and wanting to be upset, that it's what the off-season news has now become focused around. And so I just think it's important to keep that in mind, that it's not like the NHL's different now. It's always been this way. You're just hearing about it because an algorithm saw that that's what people get the most engaged with. I don't know. I guess that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, in that sense, I mean, I think it's an overwhelming, or, you know, media thing in general. Obviously, negative is what drums up clicks. Like, there's a reason why on Reddit, you know, there's a subreddit called Uplifting News. And it's a niche thing because uplifting news in general is so difficult to come by. Now, obviously, you saying it's always been there, that's not to say specifically about like, oh, hey, there are teams covering for abuse or this or that. He's not talking about those specifics.
No, it's more that the microscope is pointed at a like, it's just, you know, things are looked at under a microscope now because they like find all the dirt we can when the dirt's always been there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, God, I think we all know that, right? Like, if this media landscape was there, people say that, oh my God, if the media was like it is now in the 80s or 90s, good God, right? Like, I mean, it's just, And you could argue this is always where it was going to go in terms of how the media works and how social media works. Like, just can we get to some fun topics? I think we mentioned what we wanted to mention.
Yeah.
But again, I think, for us now, hopefully we can have this information, like these standpoints out here. We've talked about this stuff, and just hopefully we can have pretty much just nothing but more positive results moving forward now in terms of talking points for the show.
Yeah. But that, I just remember the name of the book. It's One Nun in 100,000. It's one of the best books I've ever read. So I don't know.
Happy fun time subjects. First and foremost, a big congratulations to Elvis Merzlikins and his wife on the birth of their son, Knox Matisse Merzlikins. Incredible news, even out of what was, of course, a very sad story over the summer as well. I mean, Jesus, obviously I didn't want to lump that in with some of those other talking points. A shout out as well to friend of the podcast. You might know him as Wheels in the EA NHL community, but Justin Rayner as well. Friend of this show, going very, very much viral for a video that he shared. Again, someone who, he mentioned in a tweet, he broke his neck almost 20 years ago. And he shared a video of him getting back on the ice at a point last year. And that tweet is absolutely taken off. And that is someone who very much deserves your attention. The Twitter handle is Wheels with a Z. So WHEELZ, AKA that is JAY. Justin Rayner very much deserves your attention. I think in general, just kind of a great spokesperson for hockey, but somebody else as well who within the EA NHL community, he's just a really fucking good dude. And, he was someone that was dealt a very bad hand, and you never really know how someone's going to handle it. But I think the fact that he still has the attitude that he does, he's someone that I look at towards, naturally, if there's a Tampa Bay Lightning holding a parade during a pandemic situation, or there's Montreal doing something fucking stupid, I'm going to share my opinion for what it is. But in more of a general sense, in terms of just trying to have a more positive outlook when it's not specifically talking about a more negative story, he's someone that I look at to be a bit more positive. So again, highly recommend checking out Justin and what he does.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, I thought it was crazy that he, in that video, was wearing the same skates that he broke his neck wearing. I think that's crazy.
That point, and talking about the negativity and what Deej was mentioning, there were some people responding to that who claimed, I feel like I'm being advertised towards because he mentioned wearing Bowers and tagged Bauer. Don't be one of those people, was Deej's point. Don't be one of those people.
Don't be one of those people. Plus, I mean, in defense of that tweet, anybody that plays hockey is a gear nerd. Like, that's just something.
No kidding. Especially
everybody,
someone who played goalie, if I'm not mistaken, at some point.
Oh, the goalies are the worst.
Exactly. So, yeah. And you know what? Speaking of people being nerds over equipment, Mark Savard, the master of the tape job, the new head coach of the OHL's Windsor Spitfires. Again, somebody else who, in terms of his
makes
playing,
sense.
Yeah,
Muganel's off the table.
Someone else who was dealt the raw hand, but it's been very interesting to follow Mark Savard since he retired. What he had done either on YouTube. Of course, he had taken a job, if I'm not mistaken, with the New Jersey Devils as well. He had he'd kind of been around or actually it was St. Louis as an assistant coach, excuse me. But yeah, now being the head coach of the Windsor Spitfires, and that's fantastic. I mean, again, it's good to see, like I said, someone like Mark Savard stick around because I think he does have a hell of a lot to still offer the game of hockey.
Yeah, no, I think so, 100%. It's also, it's interesting to see him in the news and not have it be like, are still paying his contract, like X team. So it's good to see Savard.
And in other good news as well, something that unfortunately, I mean, again, hasn't been covered, I think, as much as it would have been nice to see it covered. I think mainly because of how it was kind of moved around a bit. But at the Women World's Championship, Hillary Knight has taken over the all-time goal scoring record with 45. Tying the USA record that was previously held by one Hockey Hall of Famer, Cami Granato. So Hillary Knight continuing to prove that she is one of the best hockey players on the planet. And it brings me back to the same thing of, God damn it, I hope the likes of her and other players, the Marie-Philippe Poulins of the world, the players of Hillary Knight's generation, I hope they are the last women that have to deal with kind of a tumultuous setup on where we're playing, how much we're getting paid, and that, you know, she goes down as one of the people who helped lead the way towards a stable women's league. Because, I mean, God damn it, again, it's a shame that Hillary Knight hasn't been able to consistently apply her trade in front of the maximum amount of eyeballs available.
Yeah.
So, on top of that, more good news, interesting news, as we actually don't have that many more discussion points here. Like I said, it's kind of a mix of a heavy show, but trying to mix in the positive. The 16-year-old top prospect from the 2023 draft, Matvei Michkov, is making his debut with the senior team for SKA St. Petersburg. The 2023 draft, of course, you're looking at the likes of him and Connor Bedard at the top of it. Deej, normally I'm like, oh God, I don't want to talk about a draft 2 years from now. I am so excited to talk about a draft 2 years from now. With you can already see the Crosby and Ovechkin comparisons. People are getting so ready to be like, oh, Bedard's like the new Crosby and Michkov's like the new Ovechkin, and I'm here for it. I normally wouldn't be, but I'm fucking here for it.
Yeah, I've actually, once I saw the statistic, I had to look up like Michkov. Like I needed to see like how many players in the league had scored more points than him in as many games, and it's only 3. And none of them were on his team. He was carrying the whole team in the MHL. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a 16-year-old playing in the K? That's insane. I believe he makes his debut tonight. Or whatever it is in Russia now. It's probably the morning. It probably just happened. I don't really know how time works in Russia. I think their clocks are backwards. They go anti-clockwise.
Oh, God. As well, another just topic quickly from the Russian side of things. Michael Russo, Minnesota Wild reporter, mentioned a contract doesn't sound imminent, but there is good news on the Kaprizov talks with the Wild. A lot of constructive talks lately. Also, CSKA in Moscow has publicly stated he's not playing there this season. So, as expected, he's going to play in Minnesota. I was never so much doubting that he was going to play in Minnesota. The question is for how much. I think the leverage that Kaprizov had with the contract has slipped a little bit by CSKA saying, well, he's not coming here. You know, so I do think ultimately it will work out for Minnesota, maybe a little bit better than expected. I still just can't help but think $13 million on the books. You really, really could have used Kaprizov, you know, signing a bit earlier, Fiala signing a bit earlier. I still have questions with that roster, especially Goligoski for $5 billion. But I mean, it's going to work out that at least they're not going to lose, you know, arguably the best star player they've had since Marian Gaborik. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's just, I look at that Minnesota team and I'm like, man, just a few more pieces. And I think they could have gotten it this free agency period, but at least Kaprizov's not leaving.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. Especially, I mean, when you look at players in the KHL, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting, and I meant to bring this up when we were talking about Michkov a few minutes ago, is that Michkov is signed in the KHL for the next 5 years, and he does not have an NHL out clause, which I find to be very interesting. I don't know. Do you think that? I mean, maybe it's no longer a Crosby Ovechkin situation. Maybe he's like a mid-round pick because you got to wait 3 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, well, Vasily Podkolzin for the Canucks was kind of viewed as someone who was a top 3 to top 5, and I think he slipped to 7th because teams were like, well, he's not going to be able to, sign here as early as we might like. So that's definitely a factor.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's interesting because I can't really remember a time where a player has been drafted in the NHL that had a contract with another professional league,
And aside from that, then, our last...
I mean, McDavid dropped to 77th in the KHL draft. I don't know if that's the best comparison, but,
What? Connor McDavid, KHL draft. What team did it? That's the
what
question.
team did grab him?
It was Zagreb.
Medveshchak. I've got no idea.
Zagreb, who aren't even in the KHL anymore. The balls. Actually, are they? Are they still in the KHL? No, they're not. They don't even... Do they even exist anymore?
They moved to Edmonton. It's all a lie.
I don't think they exist anymore. So the absolute balls to be like, we'll take Connor McDavid 77th. That is incredible. I'm trying to look up their league history. Yeah, they don't exist anymore. They moved to the Austrian league and haven't played since 2019. Connor McDavid killed a franchise, confirmed.
God, I miss having that bear in Hut. That stupid bear logo was like my go-to.
So it's funny that you mentioned Hut because the last little talking point that we had here for the show that I wanted to bring up, I made a video on the subject on my main channel in regards to a Reddit thread that came up about here's 80 some odd things that have been removed from the EA NHL series since the 360 PS3 era. I went through the video. Some people already in the comment section are calling it defensive, but basically I went through it kind of point by point to say, yep, you're right, that's out and should still be in. Or, well, that was reworked. Like one of the big points was how NHL 14 had Live the Life Be a Pro. But it's like, it's not as if Be a Pro's gone. And then there were some things that were just like, oh, this is gone now, and it's not. So it wasn't to specifically attack the person who made those remarks, but it is interesting that it kind of goes along with, it's a really negative time right now in the EA NHL community, and anything I think that can be viewed as defending EA, especially, God forbid, if you're someone like me who has an affiliation with them, it just comes off as like bootlicking in a way. And I mean, yeah, just, I don't know. Like, your thoughts on EA NHL at this point, from the standpoint of, and here I'll go to the article. And
yeah, so I saw this on Reddit when it came up yesterday.
Yeah,
I guess it was like late last night I came across this, so I didn't put that much thought into it. But so I was going down the list and I was like, okay, like a lot of the things they removed like took down variants or whatever. But then like by the time you hit item 40 of 80, right?
Yeah.
So the way I look at this is every single one of these features they've added were not in the game for very long, right? So they're all kind of like trial things. Now, imagine, like, if you will, that you own a cereal company. And the last 80 cereals that you've come out with were incredibly unpopular with kids and you had to take off from the shelves. And the only one that the kids like is the one that costs thousands of dollars to finish a bowl of cereal and have a balanced breakfast. I don't know. I feel like if anything, this isn't so much as damning of like the NHL's franchise. I think it's very much at the inner workings. And I think, I'll say that this applies to every EA Sports title, is I think they all have the same problem right now where they have no idea how to innovate. They're at a point where they're like, we tried a whole bunch of ideas. None of them worked. And we're kind of out of ideas. If anything, it's kind of good that they tried all these ideas, though, right? And I say this as somebody that wishes that EA could have been number -1 when they finished on the list of worst companies in the United States. They finished number one. I don't know if you know this. They finally dethroned Comcast. And I feel like they should have finished -1 with extra credit. But it's just interesting, right? Because you could also make a list of like features they added. And obviously, when you look at an article like this, it's, you know, I'm always one to be like, hey, there's a huge negative slant here. I don't know. I do think whoever wrote this list, I wish they realized how hilarious they were, because I don't think they realize how funny some of these are when they're like number 63, goal horns used to be accurate. Like that really got a laugh out of me. So I don't know. I mean, it's not like they're just removing features to spite people. Like every single one of these features has a reason for it. Like there's none of these that are like baffling, I guess, is the main takeaway.
Well, it's like something for me that came to mind, I guess, in all of these. And like I said, I went through all 83, technically 84 points that they put there, but like number 67, collision physics removed. Like, do you not realize
aren't there still collision physics?
Like, that's a pretty broad statement. Maybe you don't see certain types of collisions. And my mind went to the idea of just being able to, like, run the goalies. Like you could like
how
NHL 13.
Maybe they're talking about how they switched to an animation-based collision model.
Yeah, but so see, the funny thing is, though, I remember how much people complained about, like, 13 and 14 off of that old collision thing. It just, there's a lot of trying to have your cake and eat it, too. There's a lot of good points they brought up. And then there were ones that, and again, it's not a personal attack to that person, but like, I don't know. Like I in the video, I do kind of say that this article just kind of felt like karma farming. You know? It just felt like karma farming because it's the really easy thing to do is to say, oh, they removed 4 celebrations. Point number 11. You can no longer hit the D-pad for celebrations. But anybody who has played NHL recently knows that's because they completely reworked celebrations. And now all you do is you go and select one of your favorite crazy celebrations and you hit Y or triangle when you score, and you have way more options than you used to. So I am not saying that EA is not worthy of criticism, and I mentioned that in the video. I criticize that company more than people realize. If I could share with you the conversations I have had directly with someone like Ben Ross, I think people would be surprised that I'm still affiliated with them, but I don't view the people that make the game as overly defensive of what they do. It's just more, like you said, like, hey, certain things you try. Like, oh, the scoreboard's not on top anymore, it's on the bottom. Like, that's not a removed feature. That's just them trying something different. They mentioned NBC not being there anymore. Said this in the video. If they didn't remove NBC
no one knows where NBC is.
If they didn't remove NBC a few years ago, which, by the way, when they removed the NBC broadcasting package, people were fucking sick of it. People hated hearing Doc and Eddie. People were fucking complaining every year, get rid of NBC. And now just a few years later, they're saying, well, why'd they get rid of NBC? As a way to hold it against them. Like, it's that type of critique that I don't view as valid critique. Like, that's bullshit. And not to mention, if they didn't get rid of NBC then, they would have had to get rid of it for this year because NBC doesn't cover hockey anymore. So, again, some valid critiques there. Not just from this person. There are some valid critiques from everybody. But there are some people that are trying to stretch those critiques so fucking thin just for the sake of saying, look at how fucked the game is, that it's just, it's very transparent. Well, I get people not being overly happy with the direction of the game. In a lot of ways, I am not overly happy with the direction of the game. But you got to draw a line somewhere between what's just ridiculous and looking for upvotes versus what's actually like, hey, that's a valid point.
I guess so this is what's interesting to me, right? Is like, so this was in the REA NHL subreddit. And somebody making a post this long in the EA NHL subreddit, they're going to buy the game this year. It's like, and I think that's the thing, is it seems like I think what people, I think the reason people are so quick to pile on EA, and I think they should be. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I don't like EA right now, is that their marketing no longer circles around providing you, the consumer, with entertainment and happiness. It resolves around satiating your fear of missing out. And I think that for a lot of people, like for me, I got to a point where I didn't really play NHL at all this year. I think I played Eashel with you 2 nights in total. Yeah. And I think for me, I got to a point where, hey, my life's fine without the NHL franchise. Like, it no longer provides me entertainment and happiness. And I say that as somebody that I enjoy playing Madden. I enjoy playing single player. I love messing around with my team. I love collecting like MUT cards because I could just collect the Dolphins cards and have fun. Yeah. And I guess the NHL series no longer hits that threshold for me. And I think, like, here I am telling people about it. I guess that's what's weird, is I feel like it's really weird because people are like, I don't like this game anymore. Now I have to tell everyone I hate it. And I think that for me is very strange because everybody that does that ends up buying the game anyway.
Yeah. And
it's a weird phenomenon that I can't fully wrap my head around. And I think it comes down to FOMO, right? I think that's what it is it's like you sit there and you complain about the game, but you're still going to buy it because that's what your entertainment and your friends revolve around. And so I don't know. I think that's what's interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I mean, it's the thing too, right? Where, you know, for a good amount of time now, it's like, hey, I know that if I do a series on YouTube surrounding Ultimate Team, it's going to do pretty well. A lot of people have been like, man, you should bring that back. But it's just like, I don't enjoy Ultimate Team, so I just stopped.
Yeah,
I just stopped.
It's my life FOMO. You don't log in every day, you're not going to get the best card. Right.
It's like, it's not like the only time I do anything in HUT this year. The only time I did anything in HUT was the Hunt for Rumble charity stream.
Yeah.
So, you know, I turned, what I viewed as a mode I didn't have any interest in and turned it into a positive. Like, God, we raised like, what was it, $5,000 or $7,000 or something this past November? Like, it was fucking awesome. And I've barely touched HUT since. The only time I've ever really touched HUT is if, like, I was doing a franchise mode on stream and I'd be like, okay, switching games. Let me go into HUT first, though, as like a joke. Like, that's it. So, yeah. So I don't know, man.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, right? Especially so I think that's what's interesting, right? Is the disillusion that we both have with HUT, right? And I'm going to use this to transfer into there's one topic that I meant to add to the run sheet because it's just general sports. Because you and I are both collectors of sports cards. Correct? Like, not avid, like we're not sitting here doing box breaks or anything, but like at least once or twice a year we pick up a pack of hockey cards. Like, we have collections. It's something we appreciate and we're fond of. And I think I originally looked at HUT as like an outlet to my love of like trading card games and sports card collections. Like, I've always loved card games. I've always loved collecting cards. That's just how I've always functioned. And I think seeing HUT kind of degrade like this has left kind of a weird empty spot in my collection of hockey cards. But in the world of hockey cards, I don't know if you're aware of this, Tougie, but are you aware the NHL is the only major sport that this offseason did not sign an exclusivity deal with Fanatics?
Yeah, I heard about the NFL making that switch, I think, today or yesterday.
That's going to be weird. Like, are they just going to print them on magazine paper? Like, you know? Like, just...
I feel like, worried.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm so worried about it. Like, I mean, I love my Fanatics jerseys, but the jerseys, like, they like crawl out of your closet in the middle of the night and like tap on your shoulder to wake you up, remind you that they are a Fanatics product. Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel weird about it. Like, I think that's the other thing too, is like exclusivity deals are almost always bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? Like, you talk about, I think in video games, and maybe we can wrap up the subject like this, the biggest issue, I think, with people's displeasure with Madden, with NHL, with NBA, with MLB, and even in a way with FIFA, even though they technically have competition, but people think a certain way about Pro Evolution Soccer, or eFootball, as it's called now. It's just people feel as though because there's a lack of competition, that these developers are simply resting on their laurels and not trying, essentially. I think with Madden, that has to be kind of the most valid argument against one of the big four games, because Madden's rough. I'm still enjoying it, but Madden's in a rough spot. I don't think it's entirely true that the NHL team doesn't care. I think a big part of the problem as well is people don't understand how a limited schedule works for a dev team when it's a yearly release. They just see EA and money. They should be able to do it. And by that logic, yes. But I do think in a lot of ways, these developers do try to do the best they can. At least for the NHL team, I can speak to that. I truly believe that they try. They take a lot of directions that I don't agree with. They prioritize certain things that I wouldn't prioritize. But I do think they at least try to do their best, given a limited sample size. But yeah, I mean, to your point, right? Just the idea of just everything surrounding it. You mentioned whether it be the cards with something like Ultimate Team. I mean, anybody who plays any mode in any game is going to have complaints about it. It's just, it's funny because I think the best way I can sum it up is there are some people who will truly always just choose to focus on the negative. Like, I guarantee some of the same people that are like, oh, NHL should switch to Frostbite. NHL should switch to Frostbite. They switched to Frostbite. What took them so long to switch to Frostbite? LOL, they suck. Like, there are just some people who are never going to be happy. So, I mean, I view my opinion on how I've treated Madden. It is far from a perfect game, but I try to enjoy it for what it is. And if I can't, I won't play. It is very, very similar to Hut. I tried to enjoy it for what it is. I can't, so I don't play. Not everybody, of course, on the internet has that opinion because it goes back to Deej's point of people love to be outraged about things. I mean, in a way, I do agree. Like, obviously, we could get into the whole conversation of outrage culture versus consequence culture, or actual consequences, and there's a whole different thing there. But yeah, just goddamn.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the developers are lazy. They don't try. They take no pride in their work, because if they tried, we would see them try. We wouldn't just hear them tell us they're trying. And I say this purely because they are in a position where they need to prove it. And they haven't. And I think that's the thing. If somebody tells me they're trying, they shouldn't need to tell me more than once. And I think that has repeatedly happened with the NHL. And I think it's one of those things where you look at the top of EA right now, and every single person that's been promoted has come up with a way to build a better loot box and milk more money from the consumer and build anxiety and negative feelings towards the players that don't spend money, where it's just one of those things where you almost, it's I don't know. It's, their purpose is to drain your wallet. It's not to keep you entertained. And their marketing's based on giving you anxiety if you don't buy in. They're basically drug dealers. And I can't have this turn into an advertisement. Like, I mean, the company, like, publicly has discriminated against my disability. Like, I was kicked out of the NHL Game Changers program, and that's just, I will not be purchasing their products this year. And I think you should make an informed decision on not purchasing it. And I specifically say all these negative things because I don't want anybody to think that I would ever, for any amount of money, advertise for those huge pieces of shit.
I think the problem is, Deej, a lot of people say that they share your opinion, and then they crack.
Exactly. They say they're trying. They say they're trying.
The same people, for the most part, who say, if we don't buy their game, maybe we'll prove a point, end up buying the game anyway.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that's the thing. I think it's like, if you have reached a breaking point, vote with your dollar. Don't let the FOMO get to you. That's the thing, because that's what they're preying on. They're not going to send you a great game. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they prove me wrong, and this is the best hockey game we've seen in 10 years.
So
I just know that that's a pipe dream.
By the time you're listening to this, at least if it's out on Spotify, I presume it'll be out by Thursday afternoon on the 26th, which means up on my channel right now on the YouTube side of things should be a video talking about the gameplay trailer that NHL is going to release tomorrow. And as well, again, hopefully by the time definitely by the time this is up on YouTube, that will be out. So I'm intrigued. Again, still privy to certain information other people aren't, that, may or may not have me a little bit more intrigued or a little bit more worried. We will find out. But hey, Deej, all in all, a good show today, but a different show. I don't think that's necessarily bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this is more of a discussion episode than a news episode. So
yeah, we weren't laughing like idiots the whole time. Not every show can be like that. Just most of them.
Yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry. There will be laughter ahead, and you'll be crying from laughing, and you'll be able to dry your eyes with the new sports cards from Fanatics. Now extra absorbent.
Oh, God. A big shout out one more time to our friends at Manscaped for sponsoring the show. We will see you all later this week, where hopefully we have some more fun things to talk about. Hopefully, probably. Yeah. Maybe. Please.